good afternoon, everybody, and just can't say how excited we are to have everybody here today. Very special occasion, great day for Illinois athletics, and in particular for Illinois wrestling. Before I get into too many of my comments, I want to recognize a few folks who I know are in the room. One is Jim Heffernan. Jim's standing in the back. Jim was 29 years with our program, 12 years as our head coach. Really grateful to him for joining us today. So Jim, welcome. And a few of our former head coaches in the room with us today. Tom Porter is here, was our head coach from 1973 to 1978. Tom, thanks for being here with us. A few former administrators I want to recognize as well. Dana Brenner's in the back of the room, one of our former senior executives. Dana, thank you for being here. And then Warren Hood. Warren, our former, recently retired Deputy Director of Athletics, was our sports supervisor for wrestling at the time of his retirement. Warren, really glad you could join us as well. Thanks for being here. Also want to recognize three people who weren't able to join us today. One, of course, is Mark Johnson, who started kind of this recent tree of Illinois wrestling. Grateful to him for his leadership and laying the foundation that's led us to where we are today. Tim Johnson is another local wrestlingite who is very influential and involved in the collegiate wrestling space. And then Ron Gunther, my mentor, former athletic director here, was a tremendous proponent of Illinois wrestling. He wasn't able to join us, but really grateful to him for, again, laying the groundwork to bring us here today. We've been fortunate during my tenure to have a number of these announcements. You think about the Smith Center, you think about immersion basketball, which a number of you just toured with me, Atkins Golf, Atkins Baseball, is along with Martin Softball, all these immersion park, and they never get old. They never get old. I'm so excited every time we have a chance to move one of our programs forward with one of these facilities projects. They tend to run different timelines. Some of those projects came together relatively quickly. Some of them take a little more time. I will tell you that this project is one that we started talking about shortly after I arrived here, now almost 7 years ago. And a need that we identified early on. We knew that the places that we were using for wrestling in Huff had long passed what we needed and expected in order for our program to take significant steps forward. And I'm so grateful to everybody in the room who has been connected to this program in the past and in the present for their patience, for their insight, for their perspective. It's allowed us to evaluate a lot of different options over the years, things that had some advantages, things that had some disadvantages. And ultimately, I just couldn't be happier that things have now aligned to allow us to make this great announcement today, to celebrate this new opportunity, this new home for Illinois wrestling. Glad that a lot of our team members are able to be with us today. We had a chance to share this news with them yesterday and talk about their new home, what this will look like, what it will mean for their program. A lot of them, of course, won't have the chance to use the building. It takes a few years to get these things through the finish line, but a number of them will. And certainly, as we told them, this will be a home not just for our current team, but for our former teams. All of our Illini wrestlers will be welcome back, and we're excited for them to have a chance to spend time in this space. Share a few details on the building. I'll start with the site, and I think that this is really something that changed in the last stages of this conversation that allowed us to get it across the finish line. I mentioned Warren Hood is in the room. This was really an idea that he put on the table and championed, allowed us to get it to where it is today. But we're going to put this building on the South Lawn of State Farm Center, and one of the most prominent pieces of real estate that we have as an athletic program. Felt strongly about that as we studied it for a number of different reasons. Most importantly, now that we've moved our home events into State Farm Center, it allows those two facilities to be very close to one another. Of course, as most of you know, we host the high school wrestling championships here in State Farm Center. To be able to have the home of Illinois wrestling immediately next door to that space. You think about it from a recruiting perspective. You've got the hotel just across the street. You've got our facility. You've got our competition space, all within a short walk of one another. Really excited about the visibility and the profile that will be able to bring to Illinois wrestling. I think it will help a tremendous amount in terms of our recruiting. The building itself We're talking about approximately 19,000 square feet. It'll be a 2-story building. It'll be 1 story closest to St. Mary's Road. And as you picture that space, there's a grade that runs down to State Farm Center. As you get down the hill a bit, that second floor will reveal itself. It'll have a 3-mat wrestling room, 2-story volume, a lot of natural light. Some of you who were just with us over in the Ubben facility commented on how much natural light existed in Ubben compared to what we used to have. We know how much natural light is in the Smith Center. That is something that has become a real focal point for us as we work through our designs on these various facilities. We'll have a great cardio mezzanine, a strength and conditioning facility, great sports medicine spaces, of course, a lot of team areas, locker room, lounge, nutrition, as well as coaches' spaces, offices, locker rooms for them, a lot of meeting space. Just a really nice, well-rounded home for Illinois wrestling, a place for our student athletes to spend their time, both in terms of their immediate training, their preparation, but also some of their social time and a chance for them to spend time with one another outside of the wrestling room as well. There will be an element to this project related to parking. We'll utilize the southwest quadrant of State Farm Center, and so we'll be able to make some improvements to that lot as part of this project as well. In terms of the timeline, need to make sure we note that this project is still pending formal approval by the university and ultimately by our Board of Trustees. We've had those conversations in a preliminary manner. We expect that to happen over the course of this fall and winter. But then we'll start, we think we'll break ground in the spring of 2024. It's about an 18-month build, so we should have it finished in late 2025. So just about 3 years from now, we should have it completed. I went back and was looking in preparation for our Ubben tour today. We announced that project, I think, in June of 2018. So it was a 4-year window to get from the beginning to the end. We're actually trying to carve a year off of that here with the wrestling facility, and I'm confident we'll be able to do that. In terms of the costs, it's $14 million for the building itself. The parking piece will be about an additional 1.3 for the parking lot, again on the southwest quad of State Farm Center. In terms of funding, we've been able to raise $10 million privately in support of that $14 million facility. Just a reminder that we don't use any public funds in support of DIA facilities. We will fund the remainder of that through DIA sources, whether it's through some of our self-generated revenue streams, whether it be tickets or Big Ten distributions. As we headed into the fundraising phase of this project, we took a slightly different tact than we had in some other situations. Because wrestling has a very loyal, but in some ways smaller following than some of our other sports, a basketball or a football per se, we knew from the beginning who the families were who were going to have to step up in order for us to make this project a reality. And so we approached them collectively. We went to 3 families and we said, look, here's what we'd like to do. We showed them what we had in Huff Hall. Then we took them on a tour and we showed them a few other facilities at different campuses around the country. And then we sat them down and we told them what we needed in order for the project to happen. We asked them to step forward with $10 million in order for this project to become a reality. Those 3 families, one of whom is represented here today, Mark and Carol Mestemacher from down in the St. Louis area, Doug and Allison Wagner from up in the Chicagoland area, and then Ron and Melody DeMonico from down in Atlanta. And those 3 families together stepped forward in a way that I've not seen happen around college athletics and certainly around collegiate wrestling. And it just was an incredible gesture for all of them to be as generous as they have been. As I mentioned, they are longtime Illini wrestling supporters. They are passionate about the sport of wrestling, and in particular collegiate wrestling, and even more specifically fighting Illini wrestling. I just can't thank them enough. They've been a part of this journey for a long, long time. We were just talking upstairs, Ron and Melody in particular, they've been a part of these conversations since before I became the athletic director. And so they have been incredibly patient. They've offered their wisdom, their insight, and it just really is incredibly rewarding to be able to make this announcement today and to finally be able to bring a project like this to fruition. And we wouldn't be standing here without their support. So Ron, Melody, thank you so much. It means the world to us on behalf of our program, our student athletes, for all you've done to make Illinois wrestling special. Thank you very much. Next, it's my pleasure to bring up our head wrestling coach, Mike Poeta, somebody who doesn't need a tremendous amount of introduction, but Mike is entering his second season as the leader of our wrestling program. He succeeded Coach Heffernan, who I mentioned earlier. Mike is one of the most decorated wrestlers in the history of our program. He has tremendous energy. He's from the Chicagoland area originally. His name is well known throughout our state. He's a high energy recruiter and just couldn't be more excited about where the program is headed under his leadership. So with that, I will bring up our head coach, Mike Poeta.